Now, it was a little over a year ago at this point that there were a lot of rumors floating around of an animated sequel series to Rebels being in the works, one that would pick up sometime after the epilogue scene in the final episode of the show, where Ahsoka and Sabine are about to go off in search of Ezra, who, along with Thrawn, had basically disappeared or were taken to who knows where by a bunch of hyperspace traveling whales, also known as the Purrgil. And at the time, with Season 7 of the Clone Wars in the books giving a very definitive end to that series finally, and with the future of Star Wars animation sort of up in the air, it made sense that they might then go back to Rebels or go forward from it and carry on that story in a new series that centered on Ahsoka and Sabine looking for Ezra and finding who knows what else along the way. However, then last July came the announcement that a Bad Batch series of all things was in the works, and it has, of course, since come out and wrapped up its first season a few weeks ago. And after hearing about it, I figured all these rumors of a Rebels sequel series were just that, rumors. Mainly because, and I don't claim to have insider information or to be an expert on how these things work, instead I just try to apply logic. And so anyway, logically, I didn't see Disney going all in on two large-scale Star Wars animation projects, not when they don't attract the same level of viewership as the live-action stuff. And so now with the very recent announcement of a second season of The Bad Batch coming next summer, well, it seems less likely than ever that we'll get an animated sequel series to Rebels anytime in the near future, if ever really. Still, you have to figure that the epilogue of Rebels is a story that will be continued somewhere. I mean, it was a heck of a way to close out that series, and though I was a fan of Rebels, I enjoyed it quite a bit overall. Never did the show intrigue me more than it did with that ending. And I certainly don't think I was alone. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that story continuing already. And with it unlikely to happen in animated form, I think the obvious place for it to continue is in the upcoming Ahsoka series. I think it's there that we'll see Sabine and Ahsoka, and maybe someone else or a couple other people, searching for Ezra, and likely going to new and unknown parts of the galaxy in the process. And I think Ahsoka's appearance in The Mandalorian all but confirms this when we learn she's seeking out Grand Admiral Thrawn, who again Ezra disappeared with. And speaking of that appearance in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, we don't know for sure if that takes place before or after what we see at the end of Rebels. We don't know if maybe her finding Thrawn leads her to meeting up with Sabine, or if it's vice versa. Dave Filoni has even been asked about this and gave one of his usual sort of coy responses, saying how it's not necessarily chronological, and that the thing about Star Wars is that it works in a non-linear fashion, so it is possible what happens in The Mandalorian takes place before the end of Rebels. Either way, there are some potential issues with all of this, with the Ahsoka series being a continuation of Rebels, with the big one being that, well, not everyone has seen Rebels. In fact, there are even plenty of fans who, maybe they watched and enjoyed Clone Wars, that just didn't like or didn't get into Rebels and didn't watch it. Then there are those who aren't huge Star Wars fans all around, who will want to watch this new series, who maybe don't know the first thing about Ezra and Rebels. Which then means, going into it, they're not really going to care about the hunt for Ezra, the hunt for a character they don't even know, much less have any sort of vested interest in. Now, to counter my own point, yes, The Mandalorian has done a really good job of bringing in and handling characters that come from elsewhere, and getting people immediately interested in them, with Ahsoka herself being one such example, along with characters like Bo-Katan and then things like the Darksaber. And so then, even though there's plenty of people who will go into this not knowing or caring about Ezra, there's nothing to say, maybe via flashbacks or just well-crafted dialogue between Sabine and Ahsoka, that they can't build up Ezra and make people care about him and this hunt for him, which the series will be probably focused on. Though I suppose there's also a chance he won't be the primary focus or won't be known to be the primary focus right away. The first few episodes, I'd imagine, will pick up almost right after that Mandalorian episode, and we'll see Ahsoka still looking for Thrawn, and it's only after she finds him that what she's really after will become clear, and that is, of course, to find Ezra. But speaking of Thrawn, we also know that plans are in place for some type of big culmination event series, similar, I'd have to guess, to The Defenders on Netflix, and that the Ahsoka series, along with The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, will lead up to it, and Rangers of the New Republic is or was supposed to do that as well, though we've since learned that that show is on hold and any and all pre-production has been stopped. So who knows what the future holds for that show, or if there even is a future. Anyway, I'd have to imagine that Thrawn is going to be a big part of this upcoming event series and everything leading up to it, that it may even be, in some respects, a new version or slightly different take on that classic Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn that came out back in the early to mid-90s. Either way, Thrawn has got to be the prime candidate to be, or to at first appear to be, the overarching threat or villain of this whole time period, and that's because he's taken command of the Imperial Remnant and is achieving victory after victory over the New Republic, even with a diminished force. That said, I do think there will be more to it than just the New Republic having to deal with Thrawn and what's left of the Empire. I think there will be an even bigger threat behind the scenes that Thrawn is also working against, which could be the Grisk, and perhaps he's even joined what's left of the Empire with the Chiss Ascendancy and is trying to fight them. And if you don't know, the Grisk is a dangerous species or enemy in the unknown regions that the Chiss Ascendancy has had plenty of run-ins with, and we've learned a lot about them in the more recent Thrawn novels. They're basically a threat that is similar to the Yuuzhan Vong from the old expanded universe, or maybe fills the same type of role as them, because there are also some pretty big differences between the two, but they certainly have the same type of vibe, you could say. And I could certainly see them being a threat the whole galaxy has to come together to stop. Thrawn has basically even said before in the books that the power of the Empire before it fell, and the Chiss Ascendancy might not even be enough to stop them. And so going back to the Ahsoka series now, if I had to guess, which is what I'm here to do, after Ahsoka finally catches up with Thrawn, he may warn her not to go after Ezra, that he is lost to or was taken by the Grisk, who have a nasty habit of bending the minds of their enemies to serve them. And so Ahsoka and Sabine will of course go after Ezra anyway, and they'll then encounter the Grisk and learn that yes, Ezra is with them, as Thrawn said, but who knows, maybe he is somehow their leader or something crazy like that. I know that might sound like a bit much, but do keep in mind that Ezra was really good at influencing creatures and the minds of others. One of the most brutal moments in all of Rebels was when he made an AT-ST driver, or actually an AT-DT driver, fire on his fellow troopers before then making him walk off a platform and to his death. So perhaps the Grisk could try to turn the mind of Ezra, but he pulls an Uno reverse card and does it to them, and he ends up falling to the dark side in the process, and he's the reason this war is happening, and then will somehow be the key to victory over the Grisk in the end. Either way, I'm expecting some sort of twist when they find Ezra. I highly doubt he's been doing nothing this whole time out there, wherever he is, and that we just get a happy reunion and nothing else comes of it. Though, yeah, again, him leading the Grisk might be a bit much, so maybe they've simply turned him and he is working for them, or maybe it's something different entirely. But again, something will be up with Ezra. I highly doubt that they just find him and go home and everything is peachy after that. Another thing I'm really hoping for in the Ahsoka series, or to see in that series, is something I know we're going to see eventually one way or another, and that is the long-awaited meeting of Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker, though I could see them waiting until the event crossover series for something that big. But then again, bringing in Luke early for an episode or two might be just what the series needs to really catch some serious attention or create some serious buzz. Because you have to keep in mind that though a fan favorite, and yes, she was featured in an episode of The Mandalorian, that there are still plenty of people out there who don't know or care all that much about Ahsoka just yet. They would need something else to really draw them to the series. And so her crossing paths with Luke Skywalker could, again, certainly bring some serious attention to the show, and hearing those two talk about Anakin could be one of the greatest moments in all of Star Wars, really, and truly make Clone Wars feel like a part of the larger story. Not that it doesn't already for most fans, but again, there are plenty who have never seen Clone Wars who don't really think of it as canon, and maybe that could start to change their opinion. Not to mention, after the reaction Luke got when he showed up in The Mandalorian, you know they're eager to use him again, and probably quite often. I know there's a lot of talk about Luke and Grogu potentially showing up in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, but I'm not so sure about that. I really think Season 3 is going to embrace the Mandalorian name, and we're going to learn a lot more about what's going on with the Mandalorian people in general, and see what becomes of Din Djarin having the Darksaber and what happens with Bo-Katan, more so than seeing anything from the Grogu side of things. But anyway, keeping with the idea of the Ahsoka series being somewhat of a sequel to Rebels, I wonder if we could see Hera in this new series. Maybe Sabine and Ahsoka go to her for help after they learn from Thrawn where Ezra is, Hera is, after all, a high-ranking officer in the New Republic at this time? Or could they even go to her once they learn more about the Grisk and that Ezra has been taken by them, and this is how the New Republic eventually ends up in a conflict against them as well? Another strong possibility, which ties into the hunt for Ezra a bit as well, is that we could even learn more about things like Mortis or the world between worlds in this series. After all, the logo for the series is something that bears a striking resemblance to the world between worlds, and Ahsoka was of course pulled into it by Ezra in an episode of Rebels. We then also saw Ahsoka die on Mortis during an episode of Clone Wars, which may have a connection to the world between worlds, as discussed in one of my more recent videos. And we also saw that the daughter of Mortis gave her life to bring Ahsoka back to life, and has in a way been with her ever since in the form of a convor that seems to go pretty much wherever Ahsoka goes. And so, in closing, I think there are a lot of interesting possibilities that could be explored with this show, which will then help set up the larger event series to come. Again, this could end up being something that is very much a sequel to Rebels, as well as something like the original Thrawn trilogy, or something that is almost a combination of the Thrawn trilogy and the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, with the Grisk playing the part of the Vong, assuming that, yes, they will embrace something that has thus far only been seen in the books, that being the Grisk. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think the Ahsoka series could be about, and are you excited for it? Whenever it comes out, that is, and there is no type of even hesitant release date just yet, but I'd guess or hope we'll see it sometime in 2023. Either way, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.